The Conjuring Last Rites marks the end of the Conjuring universe as we know it, until they make the prequel movie or the HBO Max series, but there are 10 movies in this universe so far, so we're gonna go through and rank them from worst to best. But before I do, make sure you drop your list down in the comments, and oh yeah, thanks for clicking the video. Coming in last place is The Curse of La Llorona. Look, this movie is very loosely based in the Conjuring universe. It's not a hardcore entry like The Nun or Annabelle or anything like that. So that's not why I don't like this movie. The reason I don't like this movie is because I find it really boring and there's just nothing interesting about it. Whether it's the human characters that we should be hoping, survive this whole thing, I found them kind of bland. La Llorona herself, nothing there. I thought it was just a boring movie from start to finish. Nothing really grabbed me. This isn't a movie that I want to go back and rewatch, and because of that, it's in last place. Next up is The Nun 2. This was a massive, massive disappointment to myself because I thought they were gonna learn from the mistakes from the first Nun movie, but no, they kind of doubled down on the things that I had issue with in the first movie, where the more we see of Valak, the less scary it becomes. And then also the final fight, the huge climax. What was that? It felt like a huge, giant video game epic boss battle that just did not match what was going on in the movie the entire time. It was completely out of left field. It took me out of it, and the movie itself I found was also a little boring, and there was just so much potential there to improve on the first movie and make new ideas and make Valak even scarier, but it did none of that, and that's why it's so low on the list. But wait, we are not done with Valak just yet. Number 8 is The Nun. I was really looking forward to this because, like I said before, Valak creeps me the hell out. It's just a very scary type of entity, type of imagery, all that stuff. And I remember seeing the trailer for The Nun, and it did just that. It was very dark, very ominous, very creepy. And to give it a little bit of props, I liked the idea of what the story was going for. It felt very isolated. They were very alone going up against Valak, and there was just a lot of mystery involved with it. But for the same reasons that I don't like The Nun 2, where you see Valak throughout the entire movie, and the more you see it, the less scary it becomes, where, the less is more type of thing would have worked really well here. And they do play around with that, with the mystery of the other nuns that are, there. And I thought that payoff was pretty cool, but it just didn't work. And I think that maybe it's just that Valak isn't a strong enough character or entity that can carry its own movie because of the big issues that I had with both movies. The more you see, the less scary it got. Annabelle Comes Home. I loved the concept of this, and I felt like it was a really rewarding type of idea, type of story for what the Conjuring universe was back then, where we were all so invested with the Warrens and their little museum of their basement with all the different artifacts. We wanted to know more about that. We really did, and that's what this movie did, and it gave us a lot of cool ideas where, you still have Annabelle being creepy, but you also have all these other trinkets that also, add to the scares, add to the story, and add to the mystery, and also build the world out. So I really like that about this movie. The problem is that even though they did all those things, and I really liked what they did, it just wasn't as impactful as I think it could have been, where some of the moments are pretty creepy, there are some scary jump scares in there, but overall, it is pretty forgettable, unfortunately, because of such a great idea that they had. It ended up being, forgettable, like I said. It just didn't play out the way I thought it would. Number 6, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. I give so much props to this movie for the idea that they wanted to go with, where it's not just another, simple possession movie that we've seen 1,000 times before, and a lot of times in this actual franchise. They did something different by giving us a courtroom drama of this person doing a really bad thing and claiming that they were possessed when they did it. I thought it was a really smart move to go this route. Unfortunately, it's another entry in this franchise that, it was fun while you were watching it, you were invested, but at the end of the day, this isn't something that I'm eager to go back and re-watch if I want to watch a scary movie or even just a movie in this franchise. So even though I had a good idea, and I give them so many props for doing this, because these type of movies I think should go that route of changing things up where it's not just someone being possessed, because there is a blueprint to make a possession movie, and it's pretty simple, where this one did shake it up a little bit, so I do like that, but overall, pretty forgettable. And number 5 is Annabelle. A lot of people don't like this movie, and I And I get it, I'm just not that much of a hater on this movie as most people are. I personally find cults and all that, satanic stuff really creepy, where the less is more, where you don't necessarily see something, it's just these actual humans, your neighbors, all the stuff that could be doing this stuff. I find that really creepy. So the opening scenes of this movie really got to me, of being this really scary scenario. And then, all the other crazy stuff with Annabelle, that was a lot of fun. But overall, I really dig this movie. It's not one that I am, once again, super eager to go back and rewatch, because there are better entries in this franchise, but it's one that I thought did a really good job at what they were trying to do. Not the strongest, but it's definitely not the weakest. The Conjuring Last Rites. I was so nervous going into this, because I feel like there has been a big gap of quality from where the franchise first started, which we'll get to later, to basically where we're at now, at the end of what they're trying to do with this initial run of the franchise. I was very nervous going into this, because I thought we were gonna get another boring, forgettable, and just kind of going through the motions type of scary movie. And while it's not perfect, there were a few, jump scares that got me, and I did like the focus on the Warrens. The Warrens, Ed and Lorraine, not the real ones, but Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, how their chemistry works through this entire franchise is so rewarding, and it just feels authentic, and it's just a nice thing to have in a horror movie where you care about, the leads of the movie. So seeing their journey come to an end in this movie was so rewarding, and I loved seeing that. Now, there are things that I didn't like about the movie, and it is kind of a little bit contradicting what I'm about to say, but because of the focus on the Warrens, which I really liked for the reasons I told you, there was a lot less of a focus on the Smurls. And, that's the family that's being haunted by this thing. And I just wish that there was more of a focus on them, because I didn't care about that family. I did not care what happened to them whatsoever. And I think that, brings down the stakes, where everything was just on the Warrens and on their daughter. And that's pretty big stakes. But there were 8 other people in this story where their lives should have mattered just as much, because that's one of the strengths that we'll get to later of this franchise, where you care about what's going on and you care about what's happening. And, this movie just lacked that, unfortunately. Good scares, could have been a lot worse, but that's why it's here on this list at number 4. Now, before I give you my top 3 movies of the Conjuring universe, make sure you smash that like button. It really does help the channel out. And a quick reminder, make sure you drop your list down in the comments. All right, top 3. Number 3 is Annabelle Creation. This is probably the scariest movie of the entire franchise. There are moments in this movie that just get under my skin, and just the sound and just the way that David F. Sandberg lines up these scares. There's stuff that happens that's very unexpected, and just the scares alone, like I said, are just a massive highlight of this movie. But then you go into the story aspect, and it gives you the origins of the Annabelle doll, this thing that is basically the face of the franchise. If you're not talking about Ed and Lorraine Warren, it's Annabelle. Hands down, Annabelle is the face of the Conjuring franchise. So it's cool to get more of a backstory to it, but this is where it differs from the Nun. We're getting more Annabelle, but because Annabelle is a doll and it's not necessarily the actual entity, they can use the doll more and get really creative with it, whereas Valak in the Nun, that's what we're getting. And so the more we saw of that, I didn't like, but the more we saw of Annabelle and the way they use Annabelle and the demon that's possessing it and using it, oh my gosh, I love this movie. It's so scary. If you haven't seen this movie, I highly recommend it. The story is very simple. You care about the characters that are in it. You feel very isolated watching it. It just adds up to a very effective and a very great scary movie. Coming in at number 2 is The Conjuring, the one that started it all. I remember seeing the trailer for this movie where you see the mom of the family playing the clapping game, who she thinks is with her daughter, and she goes to the basement, the door slams, it's pure darkness, she pulls out the little match, and you see the hands come out and clap, and it ends and it says The Conjuring. I knew I was in for something special, but when I went to go see the movie and see what James Wan had in store for us, this was James Wan, cementing his name in the horror genre. If he didn't already do that before with Saw, Insidious, The dude is here. The dude is here, and this is one of the major reasons why he's one of the best horror filmmakers of, I don't know, the last 20, 30 years. The dude is fantastic. So the way that they introduce these characters, Ed and Lorraine Warren, is fantastic. You really buy, once again, going back to that chemistry between Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson, you really buy what they're selling, and that's so important with characters that are the leads, and you want to follow them into this really dangerous situation. And going back to Conjuring Last Rites, I didn't care about the Smurls because they didn't focus on the Smurls. They focus on this family in here. So not only do you care about Ed and Lorraine, even though you don't really know them, you start to learn about them and you care about them, but you care about what happens to this family. It's a very likable family, how they're portrayed, and you really care about the mom really getting some bad luck, being possessed and all this crazy stuff that happens with that. But The Conjuring is a very important movie as far as horror goes in the last 10 years. It's great. It's really great. If you have any gripes with it, I understand, but there is so much to like about it. From the scares, the sound design, the story, the characters, so many things are done right with this. But the number one movie of the franchise is The Conjuring 2. The way that they just elevated everything in this movie, and the way that James Wan got even more effective with his scares and his tactics, you really felt like he took ideas that he just couldn't quite get for the first movie, and he was able to pull them off in here. Because they're going to London, the house felt a lot smaller than in the first movie, so I think he used that to his advantage of doing all these really creative things. There's that scene where you have Patrick Wilson turning his back to the little girl who's, potentially possessed. We're not sure yet, and I love that mystery of the movie. It also adds a little bit more of a mystery. It was great. It was not just a straight up possession movie. It kind of had the audience wondering like, is this really happening? But anyway, in the scene where he's facing forward and you see him and you see her in the background out of focus, and you start to see this thing coming out of her essentially, and she's changing voices, and you can't make out what's going on, but you need to see it. And like, even though it's not a jump scare, there's plenty of those in this movie, and they're fantastic. It's the things that you just can't quite see that adds so much fear to it. And then it also adds a lot more to Ed and Lorraine's story and us caring about them and just adding more to their love for each other. And I love that about that. And you also care about the family in this. It basically, it does everything that I said about the first movie, this movie does. But I think it does it just a little bit more. And once again, going back to one of the things that I love most about this franchise is Valak. Valak is the creepiest thing I've ever seen in my life, and I'll never forget seeing him or her, or whatever the heck it is, in this movie. The dream sequence where it's down the hall and that whole scenario, one of the scariest things I've ever seen in the theater, hands down, up until that point. There's just a lot of iconic scenes in this movie. It does everything so well. I really don't have anything bad to say about it. I understand there are bad things about it and there are like little critiques here, but I can't bring myself to say anything bad about this movie. I think it's fantastic. If you haven't seen it, make sure you go see it. And if you are confused about the timeline of The Conjuring, because the movies aren't, released in chronological order, if you're confused about that, I have a video all about that. You can check it out right here. Go ahead and click it. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.